Honorable sisters, brothers, and friends, I guess I can't wrap the table for emphasis, my desk, for emphasis and in disgust, because they knocked me off the air. So I'll try to concise it in a little more diplomatic way if I can. There are two critical issues. The first is the genocidal practice of the Zionists against the Palestinian, who are the indigenous people of that area. I speak from firsthand not only knowledge but input. It was, I can honestly say that the way it was done is that in the advisor group, I became elevated to being J. Edgar Hoover's right-hand man. I would have the input suggestion, and he had the inside power. They would discuss it with experts, and then in the presidential conference of what was to be done, that's the way it was done, whether you believe it or not. Now, for instance, of late, I finally mentioned that the Air Force was the Army Air Force, and I always wanted to go to West Point. And I said, let's have, they should, of course, and they were all discussing it, have the Air Force as their own branch. Where? Well, not on the East Coast. I suggest Denver, Colorado. It starts a mile up. Cold weather, when you're up there, you're in cold weather up there. Let's start Denver, Colorado, move things a little west. So we have the Air Force Academy at Denver, Colorado. You understand? Who am I? Well, I formed a PhD company. If MIT said it couldn't be solved or was difficult to solve, or Caltech says it couldn't be solved or was difficult to solve, then I would say, let's see what I could do in resolving or my opinion as to what the solution should be. So there's an ideas company formed. It's RAND. RAND is Research Army Navy Development, the initials, RAND. You understand? In my area right here is Santa Monica. Now, about the two critical issues. Who gave England the authority to decide what countries should form the Middle East and their boundaries? This is the way it was done. My input was, let's have those people that were being murdered by the criminally insane Nazis, their own little peaceful country, there in that area. They can live in peace. Okay. But the Zionists, who are political, says, now they got the chance of taking over and using that to expand for their Zionist expansion, which is through expanding or warfare, whatever, backed by the U.S. I said, this is wrong. See, but by that time, now Hoover had double-crossed me and experimented my brother to death and was experimenting on me and other Americans because Hoover had to be the top authority. Reminds me of my number one joke of when Hoover then had a new right man, and he says, he was called Ed, we've done it. You're now the number one man in the U.S., and the U.S. considered him the number one in the world. That's the way Hoover worked. He had to be a foot higher than, when you were in the office, you had to be a foot higher than anybody else. You had to look up to that criminally insane Homo Hoover. He was a pedophiliac that they have a museum to bring in young boys to idolize that pedophiliac. You understand the hypocrisy? The U.S. is talking out of its mouth, both sides of its mouth at the same time, because they forced me to cover my mouth because they would interfere and throw what I was saying out of synchronization. So somebody say, well, I'm not going to listen to this, or it doesn't sound right. You understand? They have everything timed to the split second. The only reason I'm alive is by the split second I was able to keep myself alive from an accident. Now, getting to the two critical issues. If the U.S. was not talking out of its mouth, both sides of its mouth at the same time, Kerry wouldn't go to Egypt. What's he going to do in Egypt? Tell him to stop the genocidal carnage? If they want to stop the genocidal carnage, all they got to do is have Obama, all he has to do is pick up the phone and call Tel Aviv and say, you stop that right now. Isn't that correct? You stop that right now, or we stop our aid to you. That they gave them the guns and the planes. And that fellow says, you're giving them the guns and the planes that are killing our men, women, and children, and taking over our land, killing our men, women, and children. We're going to then bomb you. And he kept saying that over and over again, and it was known. And then they bombed here. Now they're terrorists. No, they formed them to be kind of suicidal desperation of the Zionists constantly doing something to take over their land. And the U.S. backing them. And anything in the UN would, the U.S. would veto. Let's kick the Zionist Israel out of the UN. They used to get up and walk out. Well, let's kick them out of the UN and say, the only way you can be in the UN is if you have no weapons of mass destruction, that they won't sign like everybody has done, that they can do what they want with their weapons of mass destruction. Put sanctions on Israel. They stop their genocidal practice right now. They get kicked out of the UN. Put sanctions on them. No weapons of mass destruction. Then the Arabs won't feel they have to have weapons of mass destruction. Isn't that correct? Now, you pious of other nations that the U.S. says, look, we're giving you money, and they said, okay, we send a little troops. So it isn't the U.S. against little Iraq that has an army like the man in charge, or a military man in charge says, I can get a Boy Scout troop and go over there and beat them. That they had to have other countries join them against this, Iraq. Now, you pious other countries, when it came that they did, if I didn't mention, I'll mention now again, because they knocked me off the air. I did a little more in sequence. But out of being emphatic and disgust, I wrapped my desk. They took and said, yeah, Israel should have their own little like nation and peace. No weapons of mass destruction. You build a double fence. Does Israel know this? Know this. They follow me everywhere I go. I went all the way to Argentina from the U.S. You know how far that is? They ran an ad in the paper needing an engineer, and I was looking for work in Argentina. I answered the ad. They had a man follow me. It was about 4 miles. The last mile of the bus didn't go there. I had to walk. He walked behind me. When I got to the address, it was a vacant lot. And he walked up to me and he says, you see, we keep track of you all the time, anywhere you go. Do you understand how they work? Why? Because I said, yeah, I'm for them to have their own little peaceful country. Of the ones who survived the Holocaust, have a place to live. And maybe 1 or 2 others. But the USA, number 1, says, we don't want them here. We'll give you the money and the guns. So they dump them in the land that's really indigenous of the Palestinians. The Palestinians say, hey, they're taking over our land. Well, the U.S. gives them the guns and the planes, and they take, and now Israel says, well, we won it by war. And I think they even quoted the UN. So this is our territory. Now they want them to move out to the Sinai. They don't want to move to the Sinai. Now the Jews who left Egypt and went into the Sinai, and from the Sinai where the indigenous Palestinians were and then settled there, say, this is our land. We're the chosen people. From my reading, and my main interest is in the discipline of theology. I completed anything I thought I had to do in advanced concepts of theoretical mathematical physics, and I conferred with Einstein, and he agreed with me, and modernizing was my polite way of the Lorentz-Einstein transformation equation. I've given lectures at universities, but who knows me? The intelligentsia of the world know me. No. You pious have to understand that that's their indigenous land. Okay? Others who move there then have to work out so they live in harmony. No weapons of mass destruction. And as far as who gave England the right to decide what the nation should be and their boundaries, England said this is what the nations are and the boundaries. And they cleverly took and split the Arab bloc. Because if those of North Africa that are Arabs still are in straight, they go by car, camel, and then trains. But if they go from the Mediterranean to the Gulf of Aqaba, now they've got them split. You understand what England did? Who gave them the right to do that? Now the Zionists say they want, who left Egypt to the Sinai Desert, and then to where they were, now say they want those, especially in the Gaza Strip, to go into the Sinai, live in the Sinai. That's theirs. Is what they're doing right now. So if Obama wants to really stop it, he picks up the phone, he calls them and says, you stop it right now. Or they put sanctions on Zionist Israel that is practicing genocide. The other item, I only have about 15 minutes, the other item is Eastern Ukraine. The Crimean Republic, there where they had their navy, yeah, they got the vote. Everything is peaceful and prosperity there. The Eastern people want the same thing. But by that Secretary General who leads with the U.S. militarist and the British, they want up to the Russian border. That's what they want. And they're constantly pushing. And now they got a chance not only to get up to the Russian border, but what they want by this, I think is Rasmussen, what they want is especially the eastern part also, so it's not only up to the border, it goes into Russia. It's sort of nice into Russia. Do you understand what they're doing? So they're telling them, we'll give you the money and the guns, so it's all Ukraine. It used to be years ago part of Russia. It's called the breadbasket of Russia. Now they got to have all up in, and it's thrust into Russia. That's what they got to have. Do you understand what's going on? And that's backed by neo-Nazis also. Now, about this plane. If Israel can say, this is our land, why can't the people of the Eastern Ukrainian say, this is our land, this is our people? They did that in the Crimea, peace and prosperity. We want the same thing. And that's what they said. We are the Republic of the Eastern Crimea. The U.S. and others, the U.S. gives them money and says, we'll give you money and you then supply troops. So they take and have a few of their people killed for the money, as they're all buddies, these pious that want peace in Eastern Ukraine. If you want peace in Eastern Ukraine, you tell the U.S. to quit, even if we don't want your printed money that's becoming more and more questionable and worthless. We don't want your printed money. We want to live in peace and harmony with all European countries and trade and sensible trade and live really in peace and harmony, but the U.S. won't let them do that. And that Rasmussen, whatever his name is, Secretary General is the number one of having constant against Russia at that border. That's what it is. So the Eastern Ukraine says we're a republic. Did you get permission to fly any plane over their land? You think about that. If Israel can say we own what they don't own, why can't the people who own what they own say, this is our land, you get permission if you want to fly over our land? You understand? Otherwise, what, we're going to keep waiting until all of us are bombed? You come over our land, we can do what we want to. We don't want planes over our land that are not ours. That's, who says that? They do, and I second it. Who am I? I'm saying the true facts. You stay out of the Eastern Ukraine. You try to build what you destroyed in the Western Ukraine if you can do that. Thank you.